The December 18th, 2018 meeting of the Lake Forest City Council. And let the record reflect all are here at this time with the exception of Councilmember Robinson. And let's go ahead and start off with the invocation from Chaplain Jeff Petchel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Madam Pro Tem, City Council. If you allow me to pray for us. God, thank you for the great city of Lake Forest. Thank you that this has been a wonderful year, a year we got out of debt. So many good things have happened. 2019 lies ahead, and I pray a blessing upon this city, that as we enter the holiday season, that peace would fall over this city, and that into 2019 we would have our best year ever. I thank you in advance, and it's in your powerful name I pray. Amen. God bless you. Scott will leave that right there.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very nice to see you.
Good to see you as well.
All right, Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Basil.
Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. On the agenda, next is City Council ceremonial items. And this is where I get a chance to say a few words as the incoming mayor. I don't think I need, this doesn't need approval for this portion. It's the other part. Very good. Just want to make sure. So I have just a few comments. As council members, we have a lot to be thankful for. We have the honor and privilege of representing the residents and businesses as we deliberate the issues before the city and make decisions that are in their best interest. The community expects us to look after the well-being of Lake Forest. I look forward to working with my council colleagues to fulfill their expectations. I feel the city is very fortunate to have the resources we have not only to maintain but to improve our community. Prior Lake Forest City Councils, going back to the first City Council in 1991, laid a strong foundation of being fiscally responsible while meeting the needs of the community. The results of many surveys show the community supported that approach. I believe that culture set the stage for what we have: safe streets, a pro-business climate, road and traffic improvements, a state-of-the-art sports park, and soon a new civic center that will open in 2019. Thank you to the previous mayors and city councils for continuing that tradition. As we enter 2019, this council will be asked to provide direction on many things, some that we may consider routine, some very challenging. There are three things I wanted to speak to tonight about my focus. First, as mayor, my focus will be on the safety and well-being of our community. Lake Forest has a history of being a safe city. It is a result of our commitment to safety and strong partnerships with Orange County Sheriff's Department and the Orange County Fire Authority. Second, as mayor, my focus will be on the city's financial security, stability, and its financial future. We are fortunate to have the resources to make significant improvements, some of which I mentioned earlier. However, some of these improvements, along with the growth of our community, come with a need for additional personnel. Further, the ongoing cost of owning and operating these facilities, including replacement costs, are expenses we need to plan for. We as a city need to be mindful about future obligations, especially ongoing costs. Prudent financial decision making has been a big part of this history, the city's history, and it will continue to be important. Third, as mayor, my focus will be on doing my part to show the community that we as council members can focus on the needs of the community. This chamber is not a place for politics. It is where the residents expect us to work together, even if we disagree. On a different note, as mayor, I will be attending many events as my schedule allows, but I know there will be times where I will not be able to make it. I'm asking my council colleagues for the latitude to reach out to each and every one of you to represent the mayor and city council at those events that I cannot attend. I look forward to working with the residents, businesses, vendors, our contract service providers, the Sheriff's Department, the Fire Authority, city staff, and my council colleagues during 2019 and beyond. I also want to thank my family, my wife here tonight, Brenda. I want to thank her and my children for their support in allowing me to be the mayor of Lake Forest. It was a privilege before, and I very much enjoyed it then, and I look forward to serving in 2019. Thank you. All right, next we have presentations, and would seek a motion to approve the presentations.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Or are we doing the voting up here, I guess? Yeah, still old school.
That motion carries with Councilmember Robinson absent from the dais.
Thank you. And is Mr. Channing going to say a few words? If you could, I'll make my way.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Agenda item number 2, annual Lake Forest Lights Holiday Lighting Contest submitted by Director of Management Services.
And we have a short presentation from our Director of Management Services, Brett Channing.
So, Honorable Mayor and City Council, last winter, the city launched a new council initiative called Lake Forest Lights. It was a way to create some local holiday pride when it comes to festive light displays that are shown throughout Lake Forest. Because of its success last year, the program was continued again this year, and we received good participation once again. The Lake Forest Lights program is a photo contest that takes place on the city's Facebook page. And to participate, residents submitted photos of their home's holiday decoration displays for others to view and vote on a favorite. The contest began the week of Thanksgiving, and the voting period was open for about 3 weeks. In total, the contest reached about 3,100 folks on Facebook, and there were over 9 homes that entered into the contest. Over the 3-week period, about 350 votes were cast. One other aspect to the Lake Forest Lights program is that city staff takes all the homes that are entered and creates a driving map tour. This provides a way for residents to view the community's great holiday lights displays. The map is available on the city's website and also on the Facebook page, and we also have some copies here for anyone that would like to pick them up. Once again, the program was very successful and received good feedback from the community, and it seems to be a good way to foster some community pride during the holiday season. So at this point, we have the mayor that is up, and we are going to recognize the winner of the 2018 Lake Forest Lights contest. So let's go. So as mentioned, the contest received 350 votes, and the winning home received 147 of them. And this year, the 2018 winner of the Lake Forest Lights Tour is Mr. Scott Silver of 37 Calle Cabrillo. So Scott, come on up. So Scott's home is titled Let It Snow Silver Style. And you can see, and we have a picture available on our city's website and on the Facebook page. And so to congratulate Brian, we have a lawn sign that he can proudly display in his front yard as the winner of the contest. That is, if there's room. So his home will also be pictured in the leaflet and add the city's annual calendar for the month of December.
All right, next on the agenda is the public comment portion of the evening. As a reminder, if you'd like to participate, please fill out a blue speaker card, turn it into the city clerk, and your name will be called. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. When you're called to speak, you will see 3 lights, the first being green. When you have 30 seconds left, the light will turn yellow, and when your time has expired, the light will turn red. At that time, your public comment period has ended, and the council requests that you conclude your comments. Madam Clerk, have we had anybody request to speak?
Yes, Your Honor. Andrew O'Connor, followed by Bradley.
Something wrong with the lights.
See one?
Sorry.
Got it. Nope.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, did they get my report?
That's what I just gave them. That's okay.
My time begins now, Mayor.
Very good.
Andrew O'Connor, Foothill Ranch since 1990. I'm here tonight to talk about the previous council meeting on Tuesday, December 4th, and I want to refer to that as a pontification is the adjective I'd like to describe to the meeting. Residents came up to glorify recently elected Mr. Tedimer and Ms. Matizzetti as if you were Greek gods. Mandate was expressed many times. I disagree, because this was the first district election. Previously, all residents voted for the city council candidates. The actions taken by the decisions of the new members in Districts 2, 3, and 4 will impact me in District 5, Foothill Ranch. A true mandate was what Council Member Basil accomplished 2 years ago when she won 38 of 39 precincts and 14,000 votes. That's a mandate, not 4,000 votes from 2 districts. She also outscored Robinson by over 4,000 votes of a community of 80,000 people. Councilmember Basile is the true mayor of Lake Forest in 2019. Civility was mentioned. Did we forget how Councilmember Basil was depicted as a nude Britney Spears in a Patch article written by councilmen under a false name, and Robinson and Voights endorsed him? Or the 2 issues of the Lake Forest News that was orchestrated by Fred Whitaker, OC Republican Committee Chairman. Let's go back even further, when Councilman Tedimer launched attacks against Marsha Rudolph and Peter Herzog to have them resign their positions. Voights and Robinson did nothing. Is that the civility you want? However, Robinson shows his true fleckless civility and did later admit this was wrong. I guess Robinson made to make peace with God. Nikki is crying foul of her picture used on the mailer. I researched your name, and this bodybuilder image comes up. And the photo was used by the promoter on the competition's website. So you can't claim anything when it's been the public domain, Ms. Matizzetti. These are your photos that you had taken to promote yourself. Voights, Mr. I Love Lake Forest sat silent a few months ago when his boss, Irvine Mayor Don Wagner, who Voights works for as a consultant, made $35,000 in 2017, proposed a 400-bed homeless shelter at the refurbished county library at the edge of Lake Forest along Santiago Canyon Road. Dr. Gardner stopped this shelter while Voights did nothing. Voights promised 4 years ago on his campaign flyer to extend Portola Parkway. You've done nothing. Show me the money. I estimate Councilmember Tedimer benefited over $120,000 from PACs. And Nikki, your remark that this isn't a kindergarten, I can only imagine her future remarks will be from the dais. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rita Bradley, followed by Dr. Gardner.
I just have the policy on the appointment of the mayor city council policy, which was adopted February 6, 2018, which means 3 of the prior council members were here. It says the Lake Forest residents select 5 council members. The mayor is selected from the 5 city council members to serve a 1-year term. The purpose, this policy established the process by which the city council will select the city's mayor. The City Council will use an appointment rotation process to seat a new mayor annually. This process offers the appointment of a mayor to the next senior level council member who has not previously held the position, served on the city council for at least a year, and that's the current one, not been charged with a felony. So my first question is, why wasn't this policy followed? I don't make sense of that. Mark says he looks forward to working together, even if you disagree, even if you disagreed with the policy. The policy is there to be followed. Personally, I don't believe that an orchestrated, scripted audience coming forward is indicative of we the people. We the people involves all of Orange County and in Lake Forest, not just few selected members who were given a script to recite. Thank you.
Dr. Gardner, followed by Larissa Clark.
It sure feels good to be back on this side of the dais. I intended to speak about the lies and despicable tactics used in the last election, but then I viewed the last part of the last city council meeting, and I'm compelled to address the orchestrated and unwarranted attack on Mayor Pro Tem Leah Basil. Attacking women is not unknown among the neo-Nazi thugs who support our male council members. Goes all the way back to the last time Mark Teddimer was on the council and the physical and verbal abuse the women then endured. More recently, the Voights, Robinson, Hamilton thugs pummeled a senior citizen, a woman, to the ground in front of Stater Brothers, and then they criticized the man who saved her from further harm. Do you remember the harassment of female recall petitioners by council members, including taking photos of their female parts and posting them on the internet? Then we had the Photoshop of Leah Basil to make her look like a whore. Funny. Voights, Robinson, Teddimer were curiously silent when that happened. And only a few months ago I reported that female staff members told me they had been verbally assaulted, cursed at, and brought to tears by a male council member. Now I understand the DA is investigating an assault by that same council member on a woman employee. Of course, I find it ironic that your new BFF, John Bush, was also arrested for domestic violence. I guess he feels more comfortable with his fellow offenders. Do you see the pattern here? What the hell is wrong with you people who espouse your Christianity and wear it on your shirt sleeves but act in the most pernicious ways? Leah Basil has done more to improve the quality of life in Lake Forest than all three of you put together in your whole lives, in your cumulative 22 years that you sat there and did whatever Bob Dunnick or Peter Herzog told you to do. She was helping the city even before she was on the council. She stopped the ridiculous remodel of Saddleback Ranch and undoubtedly saved people from injury and possibly even death. On the council, she's worked to solve many of the problems in the city. It's her vote that got us the Parking and Traffic Commission. She pushed for the crosswalk on Rockfield that had been sitting there for 15 years, undone. She was with me late on a Friday afternoon in Trabuco Canyon, talking with the school that would be impacted by a 400-bed homeless shelter, and she organized the demonstration at the Board of Supervisors meeting, which resulted in withdrawing the proposal. By that act alone, she did more to improve Lake Forest than all of you did in your whole lives or will ever do. My presentation last week, Leah Basil's name is mentioned so many times. Scott Voight's 0, Dwight Robinson once. Shame on you. Shame on you for doing nothing while you sat on the council, and shame on you for orchestrating an attack on a woman who has done more than all of you put together.
Larissa Clark, followed by Sherry Anderson.
Can the city attorney clarify the difference between an ordinance and a policy for mayorhood?
Mr. Mayor, council members, ordinances are, of course, binding. They're the law of the city, and policies are not binding.
Thank you for the clarification.
Larissa Clark.
Good evening. Larissa Clark, resident of Lake Forest since 1998. Mayor Teddimer, I walked in a smidgen late, but I caught a little bit of your speech. not a place for politics? That was funny. That was rich. Way to hit it out of the park first time. You're the Pied Piper of all these politics. Councilwoman Motazetti, did I say that correctly? Motazetti? So you campaigned several times and said that you were going to make decisions on facts and data. You told Stan Yambo that. You told the meet and greet that I was there. My parents were supporters, lived in your district, voted. Facts and data are, there's only 2 at-large elected right now that represent the whole city. One of them was Leah, the other was Robinson. Robinson stated that he didn't want to be mayor. You used a job review analogy, and you said for her behavior she would be reprimanded, not promoted. It's facts and data. You were using data about a job performance before she was in employment with the city, and then judged her on that to not give her a promotion. Some could say that the pictures of your bodybuilding, they don't agree with that, and you shouldn't be where you are because of before you were on the council by your matrix. How can you make the analogy? I mean, you said that we weren't in kindergarten. Yeah, you took it up to high school for petty politics. Did you look at her job performance? Did you look at her voting record? Did you see her interaction with her residents? You didn't. You listened to Robinson like a doe-eyed schoolgirl in love after $7 grand into your campaign, and listened to the Pied Piper. I don't think you made a decision based on the residents or the overall good will and civility and data and metrics and numbers that you campaigned on. You did what you were told. You are a yes woman now. I'm really disappointed, and you should have done the right thing. You fell in line with all of these hegemonic men. They're going like this with you as a woman as you destroy others and don't do what's right. I would truly hope you turn it around.
Sherry Anderson, followed by Brett Valent.
Hi, I'm Sherry Anderson. I've been in Lake Forest for almost 20 years. I agree with the others. I watched the council meeting online, and it was like watching an ugly brawl of bullies. They went after Mayor Gardner and Councilwoman Bissell with an ugly vengeance, and they did not deserve it. They were attacked from the podium and the dais. Both have served the city for years, even before they were on the council, unlike our new members. Councilman Bissell has more support in her election than I think all of you combined. Councilman Nikki, it seems that's what you want to be called, when you ran for the whole city, I think you were at the very bottom of the list with something like 100 votes or something that didn't hardly register. I believe Ms. Bissell had over 14,000. The only time I saw you at a council meeting or an event was when you ran and lost so badly last year. She did not deserve the abuse and nasty comments, especially from Councilman Nikki. Bissell has always displayed professionalism, dedication, passion for the residents. She gets things done, and she's a mother with class. You won't find her practically naked on the internet, except when Council Robinson and Voight supporters edit her profile, specifically like the people that were here last week, Councilman, your supporters. She has done more for the city and attended more events than Councilman Voight and Robinson. Councilman Voight and Robinson know this is true and wouldn't even stand up for her. The last meeting was obviously orchestrated to insult and abuse Mayor Dr. Gardner and Councilman Bissell. It also appears to be orchestrated to get yourselves in your offices that you and your supporters wanted. It was a gang of 4 against 1. Ms. Bissell, I assume this is how it will continue. After all, we still have land left to be developed with crammed-in homes. The opinion and behavior shown at the meeting does not represent my neighbors and friends in Lake Forest. We are better than that. Councilman Bissell deserves an apology. I personally want to say thank you, Councilman Bissell, for all you've done for our city and residents. You didn't deserve the ugly and rude treatment last week. Thank you to Dr. Mayor Gardner. Thank you for all you've done for our city, residents, and our pets. I hope you continue to help. Your professionalism and dedication in class is appreciated. I also join many of us in OC leaving the GOP of Orange County. This last election shows I'm not alone. We've had it with them taking over our cities with developers' puppets and corruption. I also like to know what your office hours will be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brett Valent.
Good evening. It's been illuminating this evening, my first time here. I've been a resident of Lake Forest for about 2.5 years. I have several businesses within the confines, within the city. Several reasons for coming this evening are number 7. Well, I'll get to that in a moment, but that park, the Veterans Park, is pretty important to me. It was dedicated the second time I went in the Marine Corps. The first time was working the embassies in the Middle East and South America. The second time was in Desert Storm. I cannot unsee the things I've seen. I cannot undo the things I've done. That park means something, not just to me, but when we talk about homeless people, and there are beds for 400 of them, 30% of our homeless are veterans. 20 to 25 commit suicide per day. The suicide rate of the women veterans is higher than the male. That park is empty for the wrong reasons. I've seen people being shooed out that I know that I found them to be veterans. What is wrong with that situation? I find things wrong with it. I'm prepared to make a donation to the park to do several things. There's no bathroom at that park. I was told it's a passive park. Nothing passive about someone at 1 o'clock in the morning when I see them go there and relieving themselves. Let's fix that. Item number 1. Item number 2, that park has expenses to it. It costs electricity to move that water, to filter it. I've called into the city and met with Leah when she was the mayor pro tem, and we discussed several things. I'm trying to get what the costs are, what the machines are. There are certain ratings, so we know those numbers, we can fix that. One of the companies I have that we are closely associated with, we just recently did the deal to light the Hollywood sign. So we can do this too. We are also doing the work with JPL Labs and the director there, who said, hey, if we don't do this, that makes me a rocket scientist, and I would be an idiot that's a rocket scientist if I don't do this. We agreed with him. So he's moving forward. There's a lot of other things that we do. So in short, let me just check my time here. I have 26 seconds left. We would like to do several things with the park. We'd like to continue our meeting on Thursday and move forward and propose how we would like to zero out the cost of moving the water, the filtering, and all the electricity costs of the park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you on Thursday.
Danielle Weiland.
Good evening. I sent something to the clerk's office earlier today. I'm not sure if you all received it. So my name is Danielle Weiland. I live on Sky Drive. In May, our street became inundated with vehicles from a nearby apartment building that were using our residential street as excess parking or overflow parking. When we began working with the city to try to get permitted parking, it was a very, very difficult process. I have to say Mayor Gardner was actually one of the huge driving forces behind us being able to actually get permitted parking, and I'm eternally grateful to him, and I really appreciate his drive to get something done. And I'm hoping you guys can also use that guidance and get stuff done in the city. We were able to actually get our permitted parking through on our street. The biggest problem now is we had 2 residents on the street who voted against it. The rest of the residents were all completely for it with the amount of vehicles from the apartments that were inundating our street. The reason those 2 were against it is they have 9 and 8 cars respectively. One of the houses has 3 adults with 9 cars, 2 of which don't run and are non-operational in the 14 years I've lived there, and an RV in the driveway. Another house has roughly 4 families living there, 8 cars. They don't use the garage whatsoever. I was told during the process of trying to get the permits that fully utilizing your garage, your driveway, not having an RV in your driveway would be reasons that you would not get permitted parking, because the city was not in favor of actually giving you permitted parking just because you want to store your RV on your property. So when I found out that the city had approved a third pass for these 2 residents, I was appalled. I immediately contacted Doug Anderson and Dave Rogers. They told me that the reason they had got the third pass was because they had an excess amount of cars and they were fully utilizing their garage and their driveway. I told them right then and there that one house was not using their garage at all. In the 14 years I've lived there, I've never seen the garage open. There are 4 families that live there. I highly suspect that there's actually individuals living in the garage. The other uses it for storage of 2 non-operational Mustangs. In the 14 years I've lived there, the cars have never moved out of that driveway. That is storage. That is no different than anybody using their garage for storage or daycare or whatever other reason that people got turned down for the third pass. I'm asking that you revoke the third pass. If nothing else, then you guys actually make some sort of action so that those individuals do not negatively impact the rest of us. There are 14 parking spots on our street. They have taken up 6 of them. There is parking on 2nd Street that they could use, but just the simple storage of the vehicles on Sky Drive is completely inappropriate.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you for your comments. RV storage on the driveway is not really permitted within the city, so we'll have staff get back to you, please.
They're aware, and they have told me that it's okay as long as it's under.
All right. Well, now
okay, hold on.
About it. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comments. We appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah. Danielle, just real quick, I agree with you giving a variance to a family that's got excessive cars. I see an issue with that. At the end of the night, we have council comments where we can put initiatives forward. I'm going to make a motion that we review that ordinance, that if we do provide those types of variances for maximum cars, that there should be some sort of required garage check for it. I will make that motion tonight. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere, but I will do that. And feel free to contact me if you want to talk about anything. I'll see what I can do to help you all. Also, I have office hours. You can come see me, and we can meet with some public works and just see what we can do.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comments.
Mr. Mayor,
please, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. We have nothing from the public, but perhaps Facebook?
Very good. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have some comments from Facebook. I'd like to tell the council and the public also that our internet stream has crashed and we're not broadcasting on Facebook Live anymore. We've directed people over to our PrimeGov system so they can watch the meeting there, but won't be able to participate. Martin Henderson, comment to council. Although I appreciated the brevity of Councilwoman Modizzetti's comments after taking office at the previous meeting, I have many questions that have gone unanswered by her. Although she said she was the truth and transparency candidate, she had clarity on claims made by independent political action committees on her behalf. Although these statements are theoretically made separate from candidates' input, the Councilwoman's campaign focus was on the comments of an independent committee that supported her opponent and the, quote, guilt by association, unquote, that she claimed in front of television cameras at a press conference that she called specifically to damage his reputation. Therefore, the statements of Councilwoman Modizzetti's PAC support is also fair game for scrutiny. Tonight, my questions are related to only 3 claims by Atlas Political Action Committee, which is an arm of the Republican Party. Because this isn't kindergarten, as Ms. Modizzetti reminded us at the first council meeting, I look forward to her answers and accountability she will provide the residents of Lake Forest. Atlas quotes Modizzetti, quote, quote, "I have seen how much the community has grown, impacting traffic, jobs, and schools. Lake Forest needs someone that knows how to plan," end quote. Given that Mr. Tedemer was an 8-year member of the council, a member of the Planning Commission before that, and Mr. Voights and Robinson have been on the council since 2010 and 2012 respectively, and all of them have been part of the previous voting majority until January 2018, can the Truth and Transparency candidate provide examples of poor planning that prompted this statement so that we might understand specifically who was at fault for this poor planning? Atlas said that Ms. Motizetti is actively working for better traffic management solution as Lake Forest representative on the OCTA Oversight Committee. This is a fictional committee, and Motizetti never served on any committee from OCTA. Can the Truth and Transparency candidate tell us why she did not correct the record during the campaign so voters would know her true credentials? She can tell us how many meetings she attended as a voting member for this fictional OCTA Oversight Committee that was used by the Republican Party to exaggerate her credentials? Atlas said Ms. Motizetti supports new financial initiatives to save city money, attract quality businesses, and keep our taxes low. Can the Truth and Transparency candidate share with residents specifically what those new financial initiatives are that will save money? Finally, all of our newly elected city council members said they aren't pawns of developers. We know that Leah Basil is the only council member to have not been elected with developer money. Perhaps the other 4 council members who have benefited from developer money can explain to residents why employees of Toll Brothers took the extraordinary measure of sitting through the entire 3-hour council meeting on December 4th, in which they had nothing on the agenda. Given the lack of influence developers have on the candidates, their attendance was quite suspicious. Brandy Saint, comment to council. Question for the city manager. I understand that there have been several instances of abuse against female staff and female council members by Scott Voights. I understand that there is an open investigation by the district attorney. Can you tell me if any of these reports have been investigated? If so, where can I view the results? If not, can you explain why not? Abuse of female staff and council members is a serious issue, and repeated cases of abuse are not acceptable. Derek Natvig. We live on High Ridge Way in Portola Hill and have been working with our HOA to have no parking for street sweeping on Fridays in a section where we have condo parking overflow problem. Where can we track progress of this request? Ashley Blaze, comment to council. Mr. Tedemer, your supporters falsely claimed Dr. Gardner is, and I quote, an atheist and a militant atheist, whatever that is. Given that in 2011, Dr. Gardner lobbied the city to include In God We Trust on the council wall, and you voted against it, can you explain how Dr. Gardner can be labeled an atheist? If anyone appears to be an atheist, your vote certainly suggests it's you, not him. Also, how is it you remain silent in light of what you know must be a false allegation? And this is the last one. Elizabeth Gershon, comment for council. For Mr. Robinson, you're famous for authoring or helping author some of the most scandalous attack ads in the history of the city, beginning with the developer attack ads against Marcia Rudolph that got you into office and for which you immediately voted for the developers Brookfield and Trumark to get the auto center property. Then your gang followed that with racist attacks on Adam Nick, which you later criticized, but only after the election was over and you defeated Nick. Can you tell us what role you played in the hateful and false attacks in this election against Dr. Gardner, labeling him a, quote, militant atheist, end quote? You defended Nikki when her own portrait was put in a flyer, but you were silent when false claims were made against Gardner. And even if it were true that Gardner was an atheist, do you think it's fair game to attack someone for their religious beliefs? Is that the, quote, Christian, end quote, thing to do?
Quick question to staff. Tom, would you mind getting back in touch with Derek Natvig and kind of give an update on what's going on with the street sweeping? I'd like to keep him informed. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I think the rest of them were, I'm not sure I heard anything that was going to rise to the level of city staff engagement. I think they were more, I'll call them political in nature, and therefore I don't think there were nothing else we're going to be responding to. I appreciate the comments from the people here tonight, but I have been reminded by the city attorney about what's in and out of bounds in terms of having a dialogue that goes on. We try to make it clear that we are not going to have a dialogue here because we run afoul of the Brown Act. So I just want everyone to remember that we can't really have a dialogue go on, and the city attorney gives me a stern look every time to remind me, but I already know that we have to be careful about the level of engagement we have here, otherwise you run afoul of the Brown Act. So just a reminder. Okay, I think we are on to the consent calendar.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I would just like to add on to the comments raised on our parking policy on the third permit. You do have on your agenda tonight, item number 14, residential parking management permit policy update. That would be the time to get into detail on the comments raised by our public commenter.
Right. Thank you. Consent calendar? Did you want any introduction for that, or? Oh, my script. Got you. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the City Council, the public, or staff request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Have there been any requests to remove any item from the consent calendar from the public?
Yes, sir. Agenda item number 7.
7. Okay. And that's it from the public?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And does staff have any desire to pull anything? No? Colleagues?
Move the remainder.
Second.
Okay, and before we go on, I'm going to make a declaration here. There is a warrant item on the register for Irvine Ranch Water District for October water services. I'm an employee of Irvine Ranch Water District. Because Irvine Ranch Water District is a public agency and because I do not work for the department generating the warrant, I have determined that I have a non-interest in this warrant and will vote on the item. So to recap, I'm hearing we are going to proceed with all with the exception of 7. We have a motion and a second for that? No?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we do. Very good. So let's vote on the consent calendar with the exception of item 7.
That motion carries with Councilmember Robinson absent from the dais.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll go to item 7.
Agenda item number 7, adoption of ordinance number 311, establishing a local business preference for purchasing materials, supplies, and equipment, submitted by acting city clerk and removed from the consent calendar by a member of the public. Brett Balint.
I'll have to put down the cookie in that sense. Would someone help me with that ordinance to understand what it means in English, number 7?
What?
Item number 7.
Yes, no, we understand what you're asking for. There'll be a brief comments by staff to tee it up, so if you'd like, we can have them provide that, and then you can come back and provide your comments if that's okay with staff. Let's go ahead. Okay, so let's get the staff report on it. Is that all right?
You just take a moment, I'm sure.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, council members, this ordinance would apply a local business preferences to bids, proposals to the city for qualifying local businesses. Those businesses or those bids would be entitled to a reduction of 5% in the tabulation of the bid or proposal. Now, importantly, this only applies to certain contracts and does not apply to, for example, public works contracts, those contracts that are required to go to the lowest responsible bidder, and would not apply to professional services contracts. This is really just for the purchase of goods and equipment by the city. So it's a 5% application to local businesses. Local business is defined as businesses with fixed facilities with employees located at a business address within the city's limits or a post office box. I'm sorry, a post office box or non-business residence alone is insufficient.
Very good.
Thank you for the comments. Can you also define certain requirements? Certain seemed a little bit nebulous when you said certain things, certain contracts. And if we can just get a definition, not now, later in the future, would be great. So I can orchestrate my organization to be in keeping with that.
Mr. Mayor, Council, the local business preference would apply to purchases of materials, supplies, and equipment when entering into contracts for non-professional services. That's the certain, as mentioned in my comments.
Great. Thank you so much. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nothing else from the public? Perhaps Facebook? No?
We're no longer
Oh, that's right.
I'll move item 7.
Second.
On consent calendar.
Okay, under discussion, I have a concern that...
We got to vote on 7.
No, I want to have a discussion on 7. Yeah, thank you. I think the concern I have is the potential for sort of creating a civil war between cities where we start to build a wall around our city and say we're going to take care of ours first, which makes a lot of sense, and I understand the temptation to do that. But when you start to telegraph to every other city around you that that's the way we're going to do it, then we have the potential of creating sort of this, we'll take care of ours and you take care of yours. But I'm concerned how these policies, if they start to become more prevalent, has other cities doing the same thing, in which case it harms people, our businesses in Lake Forest. So I'm concerned at the moment about that, and so I may get past that, but for the moment I'm concerned about that. I'm also wanting to know if we have talked to the Chamber of Commerce about this policy, or if we've had them weigh in at all, so I'll look for any staff to let me know.
We have not spoken to the Chamber or asked them formally for any feedback on this.
Okay. So I guess what would be helpful for me is to understand what, in this staff report didn't provide it because I think this is the second reading, what would be helpful for me is to understand what some of the neighboring cities, and I'll let staff decide what that means. Obviously, I'm not as concerned about North County, but some of the cities that are right around us and what their policies and practices are around that, so we don't create sort of an arms race between neighboring cities and ourselves where we negatively impact our businesses because of this practice if it becomes proliferated. So I personally would like to know that, and I would like to have the Chamber provide a sense of their thoughts around this as well. So I would like to make a substitute motion to continue this item to a future date so we can get that information, which I think might be helpful to hear what the Chamber thinks and also understand what other cities are doing, so we don't have some disparate amounts in terms of that 5%, 2%, whatever it might be, so it doesn't devolve into something that we didn't anticipate or contemplate. So I'm making a substitute motion to continue this till, and I'll look for staff, a future meeting, let's say a month. If that, do you think that would be sufficient time to gather that information? That's my substitute motion.
Staff, at the last meeting, we had a report that was included in the packet that talked about cities around Orange County that do already have this existing policy. Do you happen to recall which cities those were and what the percentages were?
Councilmember Basil, yes, I do. It's in front of me right now. So some of the local cities around us, in the staff report from the last city council meeting, Mission Viejo has this same policy. They go with a 1% with no limit. Laguna Niguel has a 1% with no limit. Irvine has 2% up to $2,000. Yorba Linda has 2% up to $5,000. Fountain Valley, 5% with no limit. And then Costa Mesa, 5% with no limit. And then other cities, San Clemente, Rancho Santa Margarita, Laguna Hills, Aliso Viejo, and San Juan Capistrano did not have a policy.
And based upon our analysis and what we've decided to do, and looking at existing contracts that we have, it's showing that we, at the most, will be maximum be providing with that. I think it was a minor amount of money that we would end up discounting based upon this percentage. Do you remember what that number was as well?
Yeah. There was really the only contracts that this would have affected, and that's in the last staff report, is printing contracts, and it wouldn't have made no difference whatsoever on those contracts because those were the dollar amounts compared to the highest and the lowest were so far apart that it would have made no difference. So the Lake Forest firm, even with the 5%, would still not have won the contract.
Thank you.
Okay, so I made a motion, and I'm not hearing a...
Well, yeah, for point of discussion, I'll make a second your motion.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, so the substitute motion is to continue this item to gather the information, some of which sounds like we already have, as well as engaging with the chamber to find out their position regarding this policy. And I would also say on that level, too, to the extent that they can, if they have any awareness around that level, 1%, 2%, 5%, just curious to get their take on that as well. All right, that's the motion and a second. So I think we'll go ahead and call for the vote.
That motion carries with Councilmember Basil opposed and Councilmember Robinson absent from the dais.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that completes the consent calendar items. That will bring us to the discussion items.
Agenda item number 14, residential parking management permit parking policy update submitted by Public Works Director, City Engineer.
Mayor and members of the council, we have a presentation from our Director of Public Works, Tom Wheeler.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you. We have a presentation this evening from our Mr. Dave Rogers, our Traffic Engineering Manager. The Traffic and Planning Commission has Traffic and Parking Commission, excuse me, it's changed names a few times, has talked about this the last two of their meetings, and is bringing it back for council, and we'd like to just review it with the City Council of the recommendations that they've made to our new permit parking policy.
Very brief. Honorable Mayor, council members, as Tom noted, we'll give a very brief summary presentation of this item and then be available for any questions. At City Council's direction, the Traffic and Parking Commission reviewed the residential parking management policy, also more commonly known as our permit parking policy, and is recommending 12 changes or additions to the policy. The significant changes include a variance process now to allow the minimum impact threshold for new requests to be lowered to 67 from the current minimum of 75 if certain conditions exist. A separate process to address residential overflow parking requests when vehicles from a newly established permit parking area relocate to an adjacent street or streets, and language to allow for variable time of day and time of year permit parking restrictions instead of the current 24/7 restrictions. The Traffic and Parking Commission is recommending that the City Council adopt the updated policy, which is attachment 1 in your report. And this concludes our brief presentation, and we're available to answer any questions. As was mentioned by the City Manager, this might be an opportunity if you had wanted staff's comments on our residents' concerns. This would be an opportunity for us to answer any questions you might have on that.
Okay. We will get back to you if when that need arises. We appreciate that.
I actually do have a question. Hi. Are there garage inspections done in order to give the third permit?
The third permit is new. This is the first time we've applied the kind of restricted number of permits. In the past, actually, each registered vehicle was issued a permit. So in the cases that our resident was stating, we would have, in the past, issued 8 or 9 individual permits for those particular properties. So this restricted one is a recognition of a need to use your on-site parking. In both cases, staff was provided evidence that the garages were being used as intended. Since that time, and in response to the concerns of the residents on SkyDrive, we have actually sent a follow-up letter to the 2 residents, kind of letting them know that we want them to adhere to the conditions under which it was originally issued, and that staff may, at any given time, perhaps approach them and ask them to provide information that might suggest that they're still using it appropriately. The question about inoperable vehicles was not part of the original request. It is included in your policy at the request of the Traffic and Parking Commission to make sure that any vehicles that are in that count that we're using to determine whether a third permit could be issued would now need to be operable and proven so with registration.
So the new policy is more restrictive, and you do check the, what evidence, whatever you call it, is given to you in order to make that determination.
Correct, and that was, again, it was the original policy, the one prior to the amendments here, was left kind of open for staff to determine the circumstances under which a third permit could be issued. And staff did discuss thoroughly kind of how we arrived at that, but we're, and obviously even since then, the Traffic and Parking Commission has made some additional changes to that. So, but the evidence was required on the behalf of both properties to give staff that confidence that the on-site parking was being fully utilized before we considered whether or not that third permit would be issued.
Mr. Mayor.
Well, we still want to get to public comment. So,
public comment. Go to public comment.
You have a question for Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, Mr. Rogers.
Okay.
RV storage in the driveway, when we're giving out parking permits and it's not allowing them to park their vehicles in their driveway.
Well, this particular property has storage alongside
it's not in
the property as well. Because it is on private property, I have to admit that I am not up to speed on whether or not parking an RV on private property in the driveway is allowed or not. That would be something for our code enforcement group.
In the past, that has not, so just saying to let you know that has not. But if they can get behind the fence, behind their gate, that's, I presume that's okay, but thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, I have a couple of questions. You're doing a dance. You're trying to get away from us. You can't go yet. My question to you was, when we gave the variance for the extra parking spot, was that before the Traffic and Parking Commission approved these amended parking policies?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I know that we have an ordinance that states that garages need to be used for purposes of a garage, not for a gym, not for a living room, not for a bedroom. I definitely would like to see something more robust in this if we are going to be providing with a variance. Is there any legal consequence to doing something like that? Maybe that's for city attorney. If for us to put that as a mandate in our policy, that it does require a garage check if we are going to be providing with a variance of providing additional passes for vehicles parked on the street. Would that be a problem?
Mr. Mayor, Council, the only legal issues that would arise from requiring garage inspections would be constitutional issues related to search and seizure and unwarranted searches. So we would always have to get the voluntary acquiescence in the search by the resident, and requiring a search of the garage as a prerequisite to issuing the permit. We could likely do that. There is some minor risk involved there, but that certainly has been done by other jurisdictions.
And the fact that we have an ordinance that states that we do have the ability to inspect garages when, for example, complaints have been filed. We don't knock on doors and say, "Can I look in your garage?" But if residents are filing complaints saying, "I suspect that the garage is being used for non-garage purposes," then the city does have that authority to do so.
Yes and no. We have the authority to request an inspection, but if the homeowner refuses the inspection, we have no authority to enter their garage. We'd have to go to the court to get an inspection warrant, which is a detailed process. So, yeah, if a resident has a home gym in their garage, they've been complained on, let's say, and they refuse to open the garage, unless we go to court, we can't get access to the garage, even with the ordinance in the books.
Thank you.
All right, let's, thank you, Mr. Rogers. You may be back. Stay nearby. Public comments.
Yes, Your Honor. Vincent Burke, followed by Danielle Weiland.
Good evening, Vincent Burke, Lake Forest. Well, I'm starting to finally hear some encouraging sounds coming from the dais. Under permits, permits are limited to 2. Because each property should have existing off-street parking, which the city encourages residents. The encouragement should be Chapter 9.168. And the enforcement tool should be routine drive-bys, plain view doctrine. You're going to have patrols, sheriff, that you're paying for, that the city is paying for, that the residents are paying for. That should be part of the patrol. When garage doors are open, then the patrol officer should take a gander. Nothing wrong with that, nothing illegal. Let's see, property owners may apply for a third permit. And under the bullet point, it says the number of registered operable vehicles exceeding the available off-street parking by 3 or more. And the off-street parking is fully utilized and documented by inspection and other evidence. Yeah, one inspection isn't going to do it because they're going to move all their garbage out of there. the inspection is performed, and then as soon as the inspector leaves, the garbage goes right back. I have lots of experience with that at Viejo West condominiums, lots of experience, and that's what people do. So you can either delete the inspection for lack of follow-up enforcement, get rid of the dog and pony show, because if you're not going to make it real, don't bother with it. Furthermore, you should, and this is not included in your new policy here, include a provision that the city may suspend temporary permit parking restrictions for extraordinary situations, such as when Viejo West condominiums eventually has its driveways replaced. We're going to need 74 units, 2 vehicles each, plus another 35 internal parking spaces. We're going to need some space, parking, real close. And we don't need to be parking, people living on Geronimo having to go up to Tribuco to park. Lastly, and I hope I can get this squeezed in here, in July of this year, the Bennett Ranch legal counsel sent the city requesting permit parking on their streets. There was no license plate survey conducted at that time, and yet 4 of the 5 city council members were gleeful about granting the rabble that attended. I guess they left their pitchforks and torches outside. But I guess, if a nasty gram from legal counsel is what it takes to get permits, I can arrange for that as well for Viejo West condominiums from our legal counsel. So they can send you a nasty gram as well, and our problems are exactly identical to the people in Bennett Ranch who did not meet the required parking restrictions that the city just ignored. Thank you kindly for your time.
Thank you very much.
Danielle Weiland?
Hi again. Okay, so regarding the current policy, when the residents of Sky Drive voted in August on whether we were going to have permitted parking or not, and I have the letter with me, it very clearly stated that each resident would get 2 permits, only 2. There was no mention of a 3rd permit. Only once we then voted yes and won the permitted parking, when the passes were distributed, were we then notified that you could apply for a 3rd permit, and it specifically states if unusual or extraordinary conditions exist. When I found out that 2 individuals were granted this, actually prior to this, when we were working on the process, speaking with Doug Anderson, traffic engineer, he told me that you should not need more than 2 parking spots. And the city was not interested in granting permitted parking so that you could have a storage of cars on the street. When I found out on November 16th that 2 houses had been granted a 3rd permit, I spoke with Sarah Rodriguez, who is a traffic engineer technician with the city. She told me she did not know the reason they were granted it, but having an excessive number of cars was not a justifiable reason. When I talked later on with Doug and Dave, they told me that they had actually changed the policy, so this policy was currently in effect with that everyone would get 2, with a 3rd being extraordinary or unusual. They said that they're changing it now, and it's going to be that if you have 7 or more cars and you're fully utilizing your garage and your driveway, that you could get a 3rd pass. That should not be at the impact of the rest of us. The reason the street applied, or any street will apply for permitted parking, is because there's a limited amount of room for parking. It's because we're all impacted by this. So by giving 3 spots to one individual, and one individual in particular who stores 3 vehicles on the street, is just really having an impact on the rest of the neighborhood. I'm asking that the city actually, when they put into the policy the 3rd pass, that they actually indicate that having that 3rd pass, you must fully be utilizing your garage and your driveway. Don't be parking 3 cars on the street and having your driveway open. Before you put that 3rd car on the street, you better be filling up your garage and your driveway. That house in particular that I'm having a problem with, they store 3 cars at all times. Since May, they have had 3 vehicles on the street. They will move one off of the driveway and replace it with another in the street. That should not be impacting the rest of us. This is a privilege to have 3 parking passes. Most of us don't have it. And please, put in the policy that actions will be taken, specifically list the actions. They will lose that privilege if they don't follow the requirements set forth by the city. You have the ability to make the policy the way it should be, the way it would be fair to everyone. Do that now, that way you're not left with these ambiguous rules that seem to be very biased for some individuals.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question of her before she leaves.
I have a question.
I have a question for her, please. Well, she got that. Thank you, Danielle. I am sorry because I'm glad to see that our city staff's given out 3 parking permits. That was not the policy that we voted on from this dais here. So I don't know how that got added into. I don't remember that having the opportunity to get 3 parking permits. The fact is, they have a garage, they have a driveway, and they get 2 parking permits. That should be ample for everybody in that neighborhood. How many actual streets parking spots are on your cul-de-sac?
There's 14 spots. There's a couple of spots where you could park if you're blocking somebody's driveway, but like my car would not fit there without blocking another individual's driveway. And there's 16 houses. 2nd Street has been fully inundated with the apartments in the evening. During the daytime hours, there's actually available parking. And that's what I've asked this resident to do, is take 1 car and put it out there. Since they store, it's 3 adults that live there. They store the vehicles
Now,
on the street.
you talked about having a motorhome parked. Is that motorhome parked at the side of the house or in the driveway?
The driveway.
In the driveway.
In the actual driveway.
My
It's
staff,
22 feet.
Dave, did you hear that? We actually, if it's parked in the driveway, that's not a place to store RV storage. And so
I agree.
So we'll be looking into this more, but I have no further comments. If you had 3 houses that asked for 3, you have 9 people, 3 houses affecting 9 of the 14 spots. You could actually technically have 4 of them taking out almost 90% of the parking spots on her street.
There's not enough for just 1 parking spot for everyone. I mean, if you want to have people coming over in the evening, you've got to take one of your cars and put it on the street and save a spot somewhere, because you can't have people coming over. There's no room for people.
I don't ever remember voting for us. They have the ability to ask for an extra parking permit. So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We'll look farther into that, but thank you.
Thank you. Yes, because the street did not know about the 3rd parking pass.
Thank you very much. Oh, okay. Did you have any?
Yes, I do.
Please.
I agree. When we first came up with this policy, that there was not a 3rd car opportunity. I don't think it's a good idea, because it does set a bad precedence to the number of other communities who have implemented the permit parking. The second the permit parking gets issued, all of a sudden the garage starts getting used for other things, and then people are parking on the street, and it's just a terrible mess. So, I've always been of the mind we need to have some sort of enforcement to be able to make this work, because doing permit parking isn't ideal, but if we can do it where it actually is a benefit to the residents, that's why we're doing this. I don't see there being that much of a legal consequence for if we are going to provide a variance to a variance of a 3rd permit, why we cannot require that a garage check does take place, because it's an optional variance. They already have the permit parking, but to be able to get a variance on top of that, there should be some sort of level of goodwill with that homeowner, if they really are impacted as such, to be given an additional variance. I just don't see it being that major of a consequence to do so. But you have something to say.
Mr. Mayor, Council, actually, in the amended policy that's before you today, under the category permits, the last bullet point there actually requires, before a 3rd permit is granted, before this variance is granted, a finding that the off-street parking is fully utilized and documented by inspection and or other evidence. So they have to be fully utilizing their driveway and their garage spaces before a variance for a 3rd spot is given. That's in the amended ordinance, or I should say policy, that's before you tonight. So I think what you're requesting is already in here.
Okay.
It includes RV storage?
Can I make a comment on that too? Because that was one of the comments that I had made, and the response I got from Doug Anderson was, what do you expect us to go out there and actually look? And yeah, I think you actually do need to, especially when somebody is complaining that this is not happening and this is unfair to the rest of us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Did you have anything further?
No, I would really like to see it verbiage in our policy that says.
It's in there.
No, I mean specifically garage check. It says and other. It doesn't specifically say garage check.
Inspection.
We can add the words garage check if you'd like that.
Okay.
I would.
Were there any more public speakers on this?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. We don't have Facebook Live.
So, Mr. Mayor?
Please.
Do we have the prerogative to remove part of that before we vote on that tonight? I think that I'd like to make a motion that we remove that third parking permit. I think that there's no reason why any family house in Lake Forest should have 3 parking permits on for the street and 2 parking spots on the garage and 2 parking spots on the driveway available to them. So that's 6 vehicles that they, up to 6 vehicles they could have.
Mayor and members of the council, so this is your policy. This is a policy approved by the council, so you can do whatever you'd like. We would just like clarification if you'd like to do that. Is that on a go-forward basis, or do you want to retroactively take away permits that have already been issued?
Well, in the fact that this street is a cul-de-sac and there's only 14 parking spots on the street, and you've got 2 houses affecting 6 of those 14 spots.
I have a question.
Please.
Does this policy also, it looks like it does affect multifamily, so condos as well. They don't have driveways. So what happens then if there's 4 adults living there? They don't, and they have 4 registered vehicles. So they only get 3 parking permits?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. The policy, remember that the point of this policy is when you've got other people from other neighborhoods, typically high density, typically it's been the apartments or condominiums, parking in a neighborhood. It's single family loaded that it doesn't have parking spaces where they should be parking. And it's people from outside the neighborhood. It's really not designed for neighbor on neighbor and the individual issues that you have with living next to a neighbor that has 8 cars. Right? So the policy is not designed for that. It's not designed for the condominium complex, which those are designed theoretically to have parking requirements to park on site. Right? So this is for the single family people where they're impacted coming from them parking in the neighborhood. If that,
but in recognition of Attorney General's opinions, was expanded to include the potential for multifamily complexes that have street frontage to apply for and potentially obtain a permit parking program. Mr. Burke represents one of those communities adjacent to Bennett Ranch that we've actually studied in the past, and at the time it did not apply to the policy that was in place at the time, but now would under that. So there are some variations. The classic example is multifamily overflow into single family, but it does not, the policy currently does not restrict it to that, only that condition at this time.
My recollection also is that there was a situation where we think about the 2-car garage, 2 in the driveway scenario, but there are some situations, I think, where there was not room for even 2 in the driveway. I think that came up. Maybe you could elaborate on that.
Right. In addition to the one example where we have issued a third permit in 2 cases, and by the way, we have denied several other requests based on criteria of needing to use and prove that you're using your full on-site parking. There were other examples that we could think of, and I know a very specific one where a property has a driveway that's too short to park cars on, and they would overhang the sidewalk, park illegally. That's an example, or another example of where we thought at least a third permit should potentially be considered if that condition exists. So I want to make it clear staff isn't only focusing on this one situation where it's a certain number of vehicles and full utilization as the only idea or potential circumstance under which a third permit might be issued. We found that there might be other situations that might result in what we thought was a reasonable request for a third permit. And I do want to point out that the revision of policy in 2017 that was adopted by the council did include that language, but it was the charge of the Traffic and Parking Commission to kind of put some meat on the bones when it came to that potential for issuing that third permit for some of the same reasons that we're just discussing here now. It isn't just about the total number of vehicles.
So for clarification, that the provision for the third permit was already there?
Correct.
Previously?
Correct.
Just want to make sure I get it correct.
That's in the 2017 revision is when the council chose to move from the old process, which still applies to the old neighborhoods, where literally one permit for every registered vehicle to a limited one in an attempt to encourage the use of the on-site parking.
Okay. Yes.
Mr. Rogers, who do you take it by the word of mouth, or did you guys do a drive-by and kind of how many registered vehicles that are at that household? Or
in both cases, there was photographic evidence submitted, as well as copies of the actual registrations for the vehicles indicating their registration at that property.
And then if the car was parked in the driveway and wasn't registered, is it liable for a ticket being parked in the driveway outside of the garage? That can be ticketed?
That would be a question for sheriffs and or code enforcement.
A non-registered vehicle is parked in the driveway. Could that be ticketed by law enforcement?
No, it cannot. It's on private property.
Okay, that's what I thought. So its effect is if they had two vehicles parked in the driveway, did you guys do a drive-by out there to see that if the vehicles that were parked in the driveway were registered or non-registered? Or?
Well, the total number of registered vehicles for that property exceeded the number in staff's interpretation to qualify for that consideration of that third permit.
So after being all upset, I want to thank you and I want to thank the Traffic Commission for putting some meat on this in that case, because I know that they looked into it thoroughly. But I'd like to make a recommendation to the staff that before you give out that third permit, that you use some more verification, because that cul-de-sac is affected greatly by having two households have 3 parking permits each on the street.
And as I indicated, we obviously there were some additional revisions done on the part of the Traffic and Parking Commission. Staff earlier had discussed perhaps some further verbiage that the city would have the right to revoke that third permit, which isn't specifically spelled out if at any time the city finds that they are not meeting the conditions under which it was originally issued. So I'm just throwing that out there as a possible suggestion.
Do you have that in the provision right now? Do you have the ability to revoke?
We do not have the verbiage in there. Staff would probably interpret it to mean that, because we do want to make sure that they continue to adhere to the conditions, but that specific language is not included. It is a potential suggestion if the council wanted to.
I'm going to make a recommendation that we move forward with staff recommendation, but add the verbiage to revoke a third permit if we find evidence that they are. City Attorney, if you help me with that.
Mayor and members of the council, I have a suggestion. So I think based on what I'm hearing, what you'd like us to do is, in the permit section on that third bullet, you'd like us to add the verbiage so it reads, the number of registered operable vehicles exceeds the available off-street parking by 3 or more, and the off-street parking is fully utilized and documented by inspection, and we would add, comma, including garage inspection where applicable and or other evidence, to take care of that portion. And then you'd also like us to add a revocation section should a subsequent inspection indicate that the garage is not being used for that third permit.
Well, do we have the legal right to ask for inspection of the garage? I mean, I think that that's a civil liberties thing. I bet the fact is, if they had registered vehicles at the house that exceed 3 excessive vehicles, isn't a right to get an extra permit, especially in these tight quarters on a cul-de-sac street like that.
Mr. Mayor, so your reticence here is well placed, but we do have the right to revoke. Anytime that a property owner is granted an entitlement of any sort, we have to go through revocation procedures to take away the entitlement granted. Now, this permit is much different.
That's in this document now.
It's not currently in here, so we would have to go back as staff and draft up revocation language that would allow staff to engage in a process whereby a permit is revoked. Once that is granted, we can't just take it. We have to go through a process. Typically, a hearing officer is employed to revoke.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we table this for now and rewrite and add the ability to revoke it. abused.
Okay, so the motion is
That's my
the
substitute.
motion is to continue this and asking staff to go back and add the revocation and the clarification about the garage check, I think specifically what was called for here.
I'll second that.
Okay. Is legal counsel, city staff have any concerns, questions? A lot of conversation there. Getting a thumbs up, that's good. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
That motion carries with Councilmember Robinson absent from the dais.
Great, thank you very much. I think that brings us to item 15.
Agenda item 15, protective permissive left turn phasing study submitted by Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
Is there a staff
Mayor,
summary?
members of the council, we have a presentation from our Director of Public Works, Tom Wheeler.
Yeah, thank you again, Mayor and council members. We have a presentation. We have our consultant here from Albert Grover and Associates, Shalab Saddam. Come on up.
Well,
are you going to tee this
I'm gonna
off
give
first?
Quick tee off. So punt, me, then I'm going to punt. Real quick, we have a short PowerPoint for you tonight, along with a short educational video on this particular topic. Again, Honorable Mayor, council members, last fiscal year, the City Council directed staff to study the possible use of protected, permissive, left turn phasing, PPLT for short, at one or more intersections in the city. PPLT phasing is a traffic signal operational strategy by which left-turning motorists are provided a protected green arrow to turn left, as well as an opportunity to permissively turn left in gaps of opposing through traffic. PPLT phasing is not an operational strategy that can be successfully deployed for every left turn or signalized intersection. However, under the proper circumstances, it can successfully reduce left turn delays, improve overall intersection efficiency without significantly compromising safety. The city contracted with Albert Grover and Associates, or AGA, to complete this study. AGA has completed several similar studies for other local agencies, including recently, within the last year and a half, 2 years, the city of Irvine. At this time, I'll ask our representative from AGA to come up, and he'll give you the brief PowerPoint presentation on the study, as well as show the educational video as I discussed. So, Chalop, it's all yours.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. I'm going to give a quick overview of the project. Okay. The purpose of the study is to basically determine if protected permissive left turn can be considered city. Okay, that was the main objective of the project that we looked at. And we looked at citywide all the signals in the city. There are about 102 existing traffic signals, and 2 signals are being planned in the future. So we looked at those total 104 locations throughout the city, and we looked at in looking at the intersections, now we looked at what kind of phasing is there. So just going to quick overview on what kind of signal phasing do we have here in the city. Permissive left turn phasing is, as the graphic shows, typically have a 3-section head. They're all green ball, red ball, green ball, and yellow interval phase there. And then protector left turn phasing is where you have left turn arrows, red arrow, yellow, and green arrow. That's protector. And looking at all the citywide signals and looking at all the approaches, we counted up all the approaches and how the signals are phased. About 70% have left turn phasing. They have left turn arrows. 23% have a green ball. That means you can turn left under the green ball if you have a gap in the opposing traffic. And 7% has split phase, wherein you have the left, through, and right go together in one approach, and then the opposing left, through, and right go next. And at this point, there's no protected left turn phasing, a protected permissive left turn phasing in the city. Just a quick overview how a protected permissive left turn phasing works is it basically provides you a left turn arrow for some time where there are enough vehicles waiting to turn left, and also you get the opportunity to turn left when you have a green ball and there are enough gaps in the opposing traffic. And this particular style is called a traditional on the left. I have another graphic to go through that. This is the traditional format. Many cities have been using this for several decades, where you have a 5-section head, you have left-turn arrows, and also the yellow and green balls there. And in the last 15 years, the federal government has done some research and determined a new style called flashing yellow arrow format. And through the research, this format seems to be more interpretive for the motorist to see, okay, I have a permissive left turn when you have a flashing yellow arrow, and I can safely turn if I have enough gaps in the traffic. So this is a newer format. More and more cities are using this. And there are some areas now, existing older protected permissive traditional format, if it is in place, those are still operable. So those are the typical two-stack formats that are in use in Southern California. And the benefits, flashing an arrow is easily understandable for the motorist. And one of the good things about the flashing an arrow format is it allows you to operate it in protected permissive format. And if you choose to, say during the peak hours, you want certain areas to go arrow only, so you can turn it out that way without physically changing anything. So it's all just done through programming. And you can leave it as permissive also certain times of the day. And to determine the candidates throughout the city, all the 104 locations that we talked about earlier, we looked at existing signal phasing and how many lanes are there on the left turn as well as opposing throughs. What's the approaching speed, the traffic that's approaching towards the intersections, the through traffic, and what are the traffic volumes during the peak hours, how much is the left turn volume, how much is the through traffic, how much is the right turn traffic in the AM, during the midday and the PM. And then we also looked at the sight distance. Sight distance is when you're in the left turn pocket, how far can you see before you can make a determination that I have enough of a gap, I can safely turn. So, and that the comfortable distance is based on the approach speed of the traffic. And we also looked at the collision history, looked at the last 3 years. City staff gave us the collisions. So we looked at locations, how many collisions were there, particularly that was involved left turning collisions, if there are any that we should not be included in the study. And then, of course, we went to the locations to observe how traffic conditions are, how the environmental conditions are, is it a good candidate to do left turn facing, PPLT facing. So out of the 104 locations, we recommending about 6 locations are good candidates to do PPLT phasing. And of the 6, 5 of them are on 2 approaches, and 1 location, it's on all the 4 approaches. So those are Rockfield Center, and they will basically PPLT would be on the Center Drive, Alton Monarch on Monarch, Alton Catalina on Catalina, Town Center Marketplace. This is where you can put it on both Town Center as well as Marketplace. Big Parkway Town Center on Town Center Drive, and Lake Forest Town Center on Town Center Drive. And as I discussed earlier, these were determined based on the traffic conditions, the speeds, the geometry, number of lanes, the traffic volumes, the grade. Do you have good visibility? Okay. The summary is basically, we're recommending that the PPLT phasing be installed at the 6 locations. And prior to installing this, we recommend that city conduct a public outreach, send mailers, inform through Facebook and next door neighbor, and then newsletters, so the residents know the new changes that are happening, and establish a monitoring program for about a year to see how the public sees the operation. Do you see any areas of concern? Are there any collisions there, or how receptive is the traffic, and have there been any questions? And also you can look at the traffic operations, how well is it operating. And once it's feel successful, then you can add more intersections in the future. Staff recommendations. Basically, staff is recommending that accept the study findings and recommendations, and the recommendation is to include in the next fiscal year to fund these improvements. I have a minute-long short video.
Okay.
Please.
This was put together by the city.
Flashing yellow arrows to better control left turns and improve safety at intersections. The new signal of flashing yellow arrow means that a left turn is allowed, but you must yield to pedestrians and oncoming traffic. Oncoming traffic does have a green light and the right of way. When approaching an intersection, a steady green arrow means drivers left turn have the right of way. The oncoming traffic does have a red light and must stop. The steady yellow arrow means drivers should turn left with caution because the signal is about to turn red. Drivers should watch for oncoming traffic and, if possible, stop safely before the intersection. If drivers are in the intersection on a steady yellow, they should proceed safely and complete the turn before the light turns red. And of course, the steady red arrow still means come to a complete stop. Now, the flashing yellow arrow, the newly introduced signal, indicates that a left turn is allowed as well as oncoming traffic, if they do the green light and the right of way. Just remember, a flashing yellow and oncoming traffic.
We made recommendations and also we identified some pilot locations. The City of Irvine plans on installing at 5 locations in a phased manner, so they will be installing them come January.
Very good. I will see if my colleagues questions.
I do, please.
Please,
Mayor. Thank you for your diligence in doing this. Obviously, we want to. I think it's going to be great for the citizenry. And request we may come out to you for the future. Everybody's going to want one. I know I got 2 that neighbors that would love to have them around our house. And I actually know one close to one of our traffic commissioner chairperson's house that could use one. But I think that in the abundance of caution, we proceed to let them see how these work. But I'm excited because it's something that allows us to, in the middle of the night when there's nobody on the roads except me coming home from an event or something, and there's nobody on the streets, and I have to wait for that 3-minute cycle to go through when I'm seeing at the red light. Surely a group of cars are coming down towards me by the time my light turns green, and that herd has to stop. So I think this is going to be good for us. I think that the abundance of caution approach to allow it to be phased in is good also. Is there criterion, speed, is there a speed pattern that you can't exceed that would make this unsafe? Or it's like, would a middle of the night at a left turn lane, would that allow you to, even with the speed limit that was thought to be too high because of the flow of traffic so low?
In our case here, we looked at approaches that are 40 miles or lower. That's a good starting point. You can have approaches at 35, 40. But other cities have done it 45, even 50. But you got to look at all the, how good is the sight distance? Can the motorist gauge the approaching speed of the vehicle? So you got to look at how the grade is. So yeah, and then you could do it at higher speeds, but it's the right conditions are there.
So, but ours right now, as we phase this in, is a lower, safe, because in the abundance of safety, that's
yeah.
good.
The initial ones we picked was 40 or less.
Well, I'm excited. So Irvine has 5, now we have 6.
I
move approval. Thank you so much for your diligence.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Basil.
Hi, thank you so much for this. I really appreciate the information. You just made a comment about speeds and roughly about 40 miles an hour below. But I believe Alton Parkway in these intersections there's 50, 55, and then on Marketplace, Lake Forest Bake, those are all 45 miles an hour as well. Is that going to be a problem?
Actually, at those locations, we are only recommending on the side street. Like if you look at Alton and Monarch, we are recommending that we do it on Monarch. Okay. Likewise, Alton at Catalina, we'll be doing it on Catalina.
Okay, because I want to clarify also the ones that are along the toll road off of, I can never remember the name of the street, Marketplace or Town
Right,
Center.
Town Center, yes.
Yeah, but either direction, no matter where you're going, it's 45 or 50 miles an hour, whether you're on Town Center or you're on...
The Town Center is 35, but Lake Forest Drive is higher. We're not doing on Lake Forest Drive. Likewise, Big Parkway, we are not doing on that. The Marketplace is 35.
Okay, I thought it was 40 or 45 through there.
We are at 40 or less.
Okay,
So
thank you for clarifying.
Thank you for your analysis. I actually do like your conservative estimates. The federal average requires or recommends any study to do 45 and below, but I noticed that you did 40 and below. And specifically, as Council Member Basil recommended, you do north-south traffic flow patterns so that those turns they're not fast turns.
Correct.
They're on low-speed streets, side streets,
Right.
which I do appreciate. I wanted to ask you, though, you mentioned the two formats of the lights.
Right.
The cost is obviously a consideration for us here. Which format is cheapest? I know you said the flashing yellow is the more, I guess, intuitive for the driver, but I have a feeling you're going to say that's the most expensive one.
Actually, they are comparable, the cost-wise. We're talking about 5-section versus 4-section head. It's not much of a big difference on the overall big picture-wise. The flashing yellow arrow gives you more flexibility. So because you don't have, if you did the traditional format, then you have to change a whole lot of things if you want to do protected only certain times of the day. But with the flashing yellow arrow, it gives you the flexibility. In fact, one of the cities in Southern California, Fullerton, they use protected only near Cal State Fullerton during the peak hours, AM and PM. And the rest of the day, it functions as the flashing yellow arrow. But in the AM, PM, they do protected only. Because of the flashing yellow arrow, they had that flexibility without the added expense going there.
Thank you. And then in your course of your doing, these studies and the analysis done that you've done before, do you ever come across people that try to beat the signal? Is that something that's going to be analyzed?
It happens on many signals, whether if it's pre-PLT or protected only. Okay. And there are some instances where left-turners jump the gun, like even if it's a permissive, right, where the left-turner has to wait for the opposing through, they jump the gun. If it happens too frequently, and then that's where the enforcement needs to come in. If there are some engineering factors that are encouraging them to do it, that's when we have to go back and take a look and see what needs to be done. But it's not too common. But there have been some instances that happen. That's when the city had a surveillance done and ticketed some people.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other?
Are any of these going to be ones that switch back to a predictive left turn? Are these time sensitive, or are these going to be 24/7? All 6 of these.
They will be 24/7, but design-wise, it will be 24/7. But we can program it into all these PPLT, protected permissive left turns. You can program it such that if you have 3 cars waiting, then you get the arrow, and if there's only 1 or 2 cars, the arrow won't even come up. So that's how it's dynamic based on the traffic conditions. And then you can also have a preset conditions in the peak hours, so you can have it function a certain way.
I'm just saying because there's a lot of areas that may be higher flow during rush hour, but later in the night or early mornings, there's hardly anybody on the street.
Right.
And so that's so that we could phase in eventually if these work successfully, correct?
Right, yeah, he has the flexibility.
Thank you so much. I move staff for...
Sorry, I have one more. I apologize. I'm wondering, we're doing all 6, we're thinking, the recommendation is all 6, right? And that's quite expensive. Can we do in the study like the 3 intersections that are the most in need?
If I may. So the staff recommendation is accept the study's findings that the council is for this, and then we will bring it back when we do our budget workshop with the CIP. It's not cheap to do these. We're pushing $1 million to do these, so we'll bring this back with all your projects, and when we build the CIP in the spring, when we build the next budget cycle. So there we might want to look at phasing. Some of these particular instances are much cheaper than then others involve, hardscape changes, median islands have to move, things like that, which will take some design time. So we'll let council come back. Once we know that you're for this, we'll come back and bring it all with the CIP and have a strategy for laying this thing out.
Okay.
So move studies approval.
I'll second, and I'm looking forward to other lights that I'm hoping we can expand this. There's a few that I'm thinking on my mind that a lot of residents have asked me about. So if this is successful, I'm really excited to try to implement this in other parts of the city.
Good, thank you. I understand there's no public comment on this? Okay. Yeah. Please be sure to fill out the blue card.
I will file a blue card.
Thanks,
Vincent
sir.
Burke, Lake Forest. Outstanding concept. I look forward to seeing it implemented here in Lake Forest. Here's another outstanding concept. How about the right turn lanes where you have signage that says no right turn on red? Okay? How about red arrows? You ever come up to those intersections and those right turn lanes, get tunnel visioned on the lights there, and you're not paying attention to the sign that says don't turn on the red ball? Okay? At a few of those intersections that we have in the city, how about putting in red arrows and pulling those signs down? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Suggest you go to the Traffic Parking Commission, too. Thank you.
Great idea.
Motion to approve recommendation. I have a question. This part 2 says to direct the Traffic and Parking Commission to include the recommended improvements in their review of projects. I guess we could make a motion that says the council would direct it be on there. I mean, it's an interesting two-step process where we ask them to do it and then it's going to come to us anyway. Question?
I think we caught that in our cover sheet for our staff report. That was what was included as a recommendation to the Traffic and Parking Commission. So staff's recommendation tonight is just that, direct staff to bring it back to you in the capital projects. The TPC will also be bringing it through their own process, right? Making recommendations. Either way, or both ways, it'll get back to council.
Okay. So I guess if I could just say that to accept the study and to ask staff to put it on the cap of the CIP for consideration, however it gets there, no disrespect to our friends in the commission. Okay.
I accept that friendly amendment.
Okay. We're good to go? All right. Please vote.
That motion carries with Councilmember absent from the dais.
Thank you. Okay, item 16.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt, but would you mind if we took a quick break?
No.
Okay, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
We'll take a few minutes. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Fetterman, good job. I didn't say Mayor Gardner. Well, he did that when he was year before I got to the table. Call me.
Gail's back.
And we are on to item 16. Madam Clerk.
Agenda item 16, 2019 legislative platform submitted by City Manager.
Mayor and members of the council, we have a 1-minute presentation from our assistant to the city manager, Louis LaCasella.
I'll try. Thank you, Deborah. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. At the beginning of each legislative session, staff prepares a draft legislative platform for the City Council's consideration. The legislative platform provides general policy direction to staff and allows for the recommending of policy positions for the City Council's consideration. In addition, the legislative platform allows staff to take positions on legislative proposals on behalf of the city when the timing of certain bills does not allow for the preparation of an agenda item. This is more common towards the end of the legislative session when gun and amend bills. The 2019 legislative platform is based on the city's fiscal conservative principles, desire to maintain local control, and opposition to state mandates that are unfunded or reduce the city's local authority. The draft platform also takes in consideration the strategic goals and policy positions adopted by the League of California Cities and the Association of California Cities, Orange County. The draft legislative platform, of course, can be amended by direction of the City Council. So that, staff is recommending the City Council adopt the proposed 2019 legislative platform, and staff's available if the City Council has any questions. And I think I might have went a little bit over a minute.
58.94.
Nice. Okay.
All right, very good. I guess I'll see, are there any public comments?
Yes, sir.
Okay, no public comments.
Move
Colleagues?
that recommendation.
I will second that motion. Under discussion, any discussion? Seeing, please vote.
That motion carries with Councilmember Robinson absent from the dais.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is the city manager's report.
Mayor and members of the council, in your packet last week, we provided a plan on Veterans Park and our maintenance efforts for the next 6 weeks. So we outlined several steps that we're taking to try to discourage Canada geese from making that park their home again. And so we have someone at the park 7 days a week from our maintenance company that has gone a long way to really help control the geese and to keep the sidewalks passable and the grass green and allow people to enjoy that park. We're also doing steam cleaning 4 days a week, as well as having code enforcement out on the weekends, as well as driving by during the week. We're going to keep this up for the next approximately 3 weeks until the end of the year, and then we'll assess. At that point, if it appears we're making progress and the park remains clean, we'll ratchet back and see how that goes for the next 6 weeks. Sometime in February, either the first or second meeting, we'll come back to you and give you more information on how it's going. But in the meantime, we're really encouraged by how it went over the last week, and especially over the weekend. Much fewer geese, and a lot of positive comments from the community about the way the park looks and their ability to enjoy the park. That concludes my report.
Very nice. Thank you very much. All right, Councilmember Basile.
Yes, yesterday, for those that aren't aware, yesterday morning, 4:46 a.m., Tom Cagley's wife passed away. Nancy Cagley had been suffering from a brain tumor and spent this year in practically hospice the whole year. So Councilman Cagley, as he was trying to perform his duties as a council member, had that, and that was his whole life. So, hearts go out to him. I did speak with him today. He did sound very good. He's got a long road of recovery, and grieving ahead of him, but he wanted to give his best wishes and asked me to speak for him tonight. So I'd like to close this meeting on behalf of Nancy Cagley for tonight, and she was a wonderful lady, and she will be sorely missed.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Voights.
This holiday season, it's a special time for our city. We have Heritage Hill, which has our candlelight services. We have a new civic center coming forward, so I'd like to put on the agenda for a future meeting a possible planning of a pine tree at our civic center that we can decorate, and we could have our own tree lighting ceremony there in years to come and for years to go, so people could build on their memories of our civic center. So the civic center is a great location for that because we have the room for parking, we have the room for big trees, and so I would love to have a pine tree planted as it grows. We can decorate it. Orange has a big one that's celebrated, and many of us from other cities go to it, but the fact is I think that would be a great way to celebrate the holidays, and even bring a menorah there too, so we could have all of the face, and so I think that would be a time of celebration as we celebrate the holidays here in Lake Forest, as we have our own civic center home. So I'd like to put that on the agenda.
I have no comments.
I need a second.
Oh. I second.
Okay.
So, yeah, I went to Heritage Hill, stopped by for the candle lighting ceremony, or the candle lighting service there at as we celebrate the lights there. But our leadership appreciation was wonderful. Thank you, staff. The food was outstanding. Where was that from?
Cittadina, Italian trattoria.
Where is that?
It's next to Urban Grill and Foothill Ranch.
Wow, great choice. Thank you, staff, for a wonderful celebration. Great speakers and a great turnout. So with that, I'll like to ask the public and those here present to pray for Tom Cagley in his loss. Thank you, Councilwoman Zeal, for the closing, the memory. I support that. And I think that we've done good. I think that the city has a lot to celebrate, and I think that we're going great places in 2019. So happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and a healthy and prosperous New Year to you all.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Modazzati.
I have no comments.
All right, thank you very much. I did attend the Etnies Skate Park 15th anniversary. I did not get on a skateboard. I was asked, but haven't been on one in many years, although I do still have my board when I was probably 15 years old, and but not with me. And did go to Heritage Hill, and it was beautiful, as always. Great to walk around and take that all in. With that, I would also like to echo happy holidays and Merry Christmas to everyone for the holiday season, and we will adjourn this meeting in the memory of Nancy Cagley. Thank you.